Look at your arm right now. Skin, fine hair, veins slightly visible underneath. This is your original outfit, the only thing you can never take off. And it was tailored 2 million years ago without a single needle. But there was a moment, specific, definitive, identifiable, when that was no longer enough. What did your ancestors do next? To find the answer, let's go back 2 million years. The East African savannah, the sun at its zenith, the ground cracked underfoot, and a man running after an antelope that he knows he will never catch. Not running fast. The antelope left him behind from the very first minute, but he keeps running, steadily, his pace unchanging, his eyes never leaving the dust trail on the horizon. The outside temperature is 40 degrees. He is wearing nothing. Sweat runs down his spine, evaporating the moment it touches the dry air, pulling heat away from his body in a way no layer of fur ever could. The antelope dissipates heat through its mouth, slower and less efficiently, and after 3 hours in the sun, it starts to stumble. He doesn't need to be faster. He just needs to not overheat. Nina Jablonski at Penn State spent over 20 years on the question of why, out of millions of mammal species, only humans are almost entirely hairless. Her 2004 conclusion was so simple it was hard to accept. Human hair disappeared because having fur meant death. On the African savannah, about 2 million years ago, our ancestors shifted from living in the forest to hunting at midday, the exact time frame when every other species hid in the shade. Fur retains heat. The heat would kill the man before the man could kill the prey. Those individuals who mutated to have less hair, sweated more, could run longer without dying of heat exhaustion. Those individuals ate. The remaining individuals left no descendants. After hundreds of thousands of generations, the result is 2 to 4 million sweat glands distributed evenly across the body, more than any primate on the planet, activating within seconds when core temperature rises, actively and continuously cooling without needing conscious command. The Hadza people in Tanzania still hunt that way. One morning in the Iasi region, a hunter leaves camp at dawn, tracking a male antelope, not because it's slow, but because he knows it will run until it can no longer run. Rubber sandals, a piece of cloth around his hips, a bow on his shoulder. Under the 10 a.m. sun, sweat oozes all over his body and evaporates instantly, with no layer of fabric to block it. His skin does exactly what it was designed to do, and it does it better than any sportswear. But then the climate changed. Around 170,000 years ago, an ice age pushed South African temperatures lower than at any point in the millions of years prior. Not a pleasant chill, a deadly cold, an overnight cold that made a hairless, fatless body, unable to retain enough heat to keep the heart beating until morning. This is when the pressure reversed. Millions of years ago, fur was the enemy because it retained too much heat. Now, being hairless was the enemy because the body lost heat too fast, and your ancestors had to find something else. The first attempt was probably what was already right in front of them, the skin of the animal they just killed. Not sewing, not designing, simply pulling that skin around the body and keeping warm overnight. But fresh animal skin is stiff, heavy, and rots within days. Someone, we don't know who, we don't know exactly where, we don't know exactly when, realized that if you scrape off the meat stuck to the inside of the skin, if you dry it properly, if you beat it soft with a stone, that skin could be used for much longer. That was the first step, not an invention, not a moment of genius, just cumulative experimentation over many generations, each generation keeping what worked better than the last. Then came the needle. At Blombos Cave, South Africa, archaeologists found it in 75,000-year-old sediment, a small piece of bone, no longer than a pinky finger, worn down at one end in a way that has only one explanation. Someone sat, grinding the tip of this needle until it was sharp enough to pierce skin, then threaded a piece of sinew or plant fiber through the small hole at the tail, and then sewed, not draping the skin over the body, not tying it with a string, sewing, 2 pieces of skin joined together, hugging the body closely keeping warmth exactly where it needs to be kept. This was the step that changed everything, not because it looked better, but because stitched clothing retained heat twice, as well as loosely draped skins. Whoever did that survived the winter. Whoever couldn't, didn't. Mark Stonking at the Max Planck Institute in 2003 confirmed this milestone from a completely different angle. The louse, head lice, and clothing lice are two distinct species, branching off right when there was something new for lice to live on besides hair. DNA analysis shows they split apart 83,000 to 170,000 years ago. That is the biological signature of when clothing became regular enough to create a microecosystem on the human body. Ian Gilligan at the University of Sydney in 2019 put all those pieces into a single framework. Clothing didn't appear because humans wanted to cover up. It didn't appear because of culture. It didn't appear out of shame. It appeared because temperatures dropped so low that bare skin was no longer enough to survive the night, and your ancestors found a way to patch that vulnerability with the skin of the animal they just killed. The fashion industry knows this. Not the part about the bone needle, but the part about your brain. The human brain was programmed over millions of years to hoard anything scarce, because for most of human history, what is scarce today is what saves your life next winter. Fast fashion exploits exactly that mechanism. A new collection every 2 weeks. Colors that are this season only. Purchase countdown timers. Notifications saying only 2 items left. Not because that shirt is prettier than the one you're wearing, but because your brain cannot distinguish between the last animal's skin before winter and the sage bomber jacket with only 3 size M's left. Zara releases new designs 52 times a year. Not because tastes change that fast. They found the oldest part of your brain, the part created to fear scarcity, fear the cold, fear being unprepared, and built a machine that fits perfectly into that fear. The person sitting in Blombos Cave 75,000 years ago, grinding that bone needle, wasn't thinking about fashion. They were thinking about the next morning, whether they'd be warm enough to wake up. You open a shopping app at 11 p.m., your hand scrolling through hundreds of shirts, and your brain is solving the exact same problem. It's just that the winter has long since disappeared, while the machine keeps on running.